Welcome to the Enterprise Excellence Podcast, where our purpose is to help create a better future. Learn from our world's experts how to improve your organisation sustainably. Learn how to achieve and sustain an excellence journey for yourself, others, and the planet.
And I'm your host, Brad Jevons, coming to you from Brisbane, Australia. We are proudly brought to you in association with SA Partners, a world-leading business transformation consultancy. SA Partners are a truly purposeful company focused on helping organisations achieve sustainable improvement for themselves, others, and the planet.
Welcome to episode 137 of the Enterprise Excellence Podcast. It is such a pleasure to have Dr Indi Ray on the show with us today. Indi is the Managing Director of Vedas Advisory, an organisation focused on supporting organisations in a journey towards enterprise excellence. Indi has supported enterprises such as NBN, Guide Dogs Australia, and also commercial organisations such as Woolworths, Qantas and Vodafone. Indi is here today to discuss achieving excellence within government and not-for-profit organisations. Let's get into the episode. Indi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Brad.
I really appreciate it, mate. Indi, we're talking about government and not-for-profit organisations and achieving enterprise excellence. Like, what's the difference in deploying excellence within a government or not-for-profit organisation?
I think, Brad, there's stuff on the surface that's quite obvious, and then there's stuff as you get into it that is less obvious and needs a bit of consideration. The stuff that's obvious is usually when it comes to government funding or government money, then there needs to be a lot or a high amount of regulatory work. For the not-for-profit, if there's NDIS funding involved, there needs to be traceable bits around how money is spent, how time is spent, how staff is utilised, what the feedback mechanisms from clients need to be. From the NBN, there is a high scrutiny on commercial contracts and around milestones. So it's about working that in to how we approach excellence in those organizations. The stuff that's less obvious, it wasn't obvious to me anyway when I started working with them, is sometimes simple stuff that in a commercial organization seems obvious, but isn't so obvious. So for example, at the NBN, it was around who the customer was. Well, actually, is the customer our end consumer, which is the broadband user, or is the customer the residential service provider, who we sell fibre services to, who then on-sell onto the end customer? So, or is it internal customers within NBN? So, it's understanding who the customer is and then connecting customer to purpose actually wasn't as straightforward as I thought it would be. And it wasn't for many teams either. So that required a fair bit of deliberate work when we recognized that there was potentially a gap there. At the guide dogs and not-for-profit, quite often, people operating in the not-for-profit space, they don't have a commercial outcome. It's an outcome for the greater good of society, the greater good of the vulnerable, the greater good of people that deserve to lead a life of their choosing, regardless of their impediment or their disability. So, how do you work for the greater good into a purpose statement? How do we work for the greater good into performance measures? It's not obvious, and it requires work.
It's amazing, isn't it, when you think about, like, a lot of my guests, we talk about auto-live in the commercial world, where you've got auto-live, they've defined the purpose of we save lives, and it's just rocket fuel. They've taken that purpose and then cascaded it and distilled it into the company as just part of the DNA of everyone. And virtually all these government and not-for-profit organizations, there is an insanely powerful purpose there, isn't it? Like, it's like rocket fuel, all of them. Where's the gap, mate? Like, what's the gap would you say for that government or not-for-profit organization where they got this real passion, but it seems to be disconnected through the company and people are, they're not getting ultimate results from it? What do you find is the main challenge there to bridge that gap for them?
Yeah, so broadly speaking, if there's one word to describe how organizations, and I'd say all organizations do this more successfully, there's one word that I talk about, it's about connection. So at government organizations, sometimes the left hand and the right hand don't always talk to each other. The same is true of not-for-profits. You've got people that absolutely want to do the right thing. In my experience, people don't go to work to do a bad job. But sometimes what happens is that you've got these teams with all the best intent, but aren't necessarily connected. So you've got, a strategy team somewhere coming up with brilliant strategy. You've got people and culture coming up with the best values. How do the values turn up in the strategy? You'd think that the two would be intermeshed. You'd think that there would be some embedding and there would be some, we'll bring that to life. So to your question, Brad, around where the gap is, I think I see people with great values, great intent, that struggle to bring some of these values and principles to life. They've got hearts of gold. They absolutely do, because they wouldn't be doing what they do if they didn't have a higher purpose. For the NBN, it was about bridging the digital divide, giving everyone a fair go, right? At being connected and supporting their businesses, supporting their education, supporting rural Australia, and yet within a big government organization, when you haven't got that connection, you've got this situation where the strategy team and people and culture, operations, and everybody else, they're all working in not the best synced up way, in not the best linked up way. So you get this performance that sometimes stutters because of it. So yeah, I'd say that was the biggest gap.
India, I've heard a statement. I think I had a friend come back from Harvard doing some work there, and he had a word that described, I think, what you're talking about, and I'm keen to get your take on this. He called it, you need connection or alignment from north to south, which is, strategy and purpose and culture from the top to the bottom of the organization, but then also east to west, from suppliers to internal customers to external customers. And you need that connection and alignment both directions, and great communication. Is that what you're talking about, mate?
Yeah, broadly speaking, that pretty much hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? So, if we're talking about how organizations should work, and it touches a little bit about on, so one of the things that I do is I help organizations transform. So, if I'm helping an organization transform, I ask them, so what does your ideal state or what does your future state look like? And, quite often it comes back to, well, Indy, we want to be able to plan the work, and then we want to be able to work the plan. So, I've heard that mantra a lot at NBN and at other places where, you need this planning bit around going, well, here's our alignment on Northstar. Here's our alignment around customer, our shareholders, our corporate sponsor, wherever that Northstar needs to be. Here's the value proposition from the customer, and we do all this great planning, and then we put quarterly or yearly plans, maybe even 3-year, 5-year plans in motion. But then we need to keep checking up on it. We need to check on, well, how are we executing on that plan? How are we executing on our strategy? And then we get into the realm and then designing for what I call and what others call enterprise agility, which is how do we then check on the plan and then pivot or adjust depending on how we're going. Because there will be things that we did not see. There will be things that we could not predict. And therefore, there needs to be an ability in teams to go, actually, we need to shift on our North Star a little bit, or we need to go better at the North Star because we understand what good looks like. And today hasn't been a good day. So what are we going to do about making tomorrow better the day than today, right? So I think planning the work and working the plan is really, really important. I think that's your North-South. I think for your East-West, though, you've got to be able to understand that line of sight to customers. You've got to be able to give people that line of sight. I mean, in NBN and in other, and something that we're doing in Guide Dogs at the moment, or thinking about in Guide Dogs at the moment, is how do we map the client journey? How do we map the customer journey? How do we understand where the touch points are? How do we understand what customers value? And this is another thing that I think sometimes in not-for-profits and in government organizations people struggle with, is what actually constitutes value. Because if we define value as what the customer values or what the customer will pay for, right? If a very simple definition of value from lean thinking, then if there's uncertainty around who the customer is and where they're situated and what the requirements are, then driving customer value, again, is not obvious. What constitutes value? So it's really, really important to then map the value stream, and just like anywhere else, map the value stream, understand the value chain with customers and suppliers. And I think that's the East-West part that you're talking about, because it's about understanding value. But I'd go further and I would say, well, it's especially important in not-for-profits and government organizations where you've got some champion people, but you haven't always got teams of champion or a championship team. So to create teams that are aligned, that drive value, you need to really, really work on culture. So I think if you've got the culture piece right in an organization, then the journey from east to west becomes that much easier.
Indi, what a great episode. Remember, you can visit our website, enterpriseexcellencepodcast.com/downloads, to get hold of an enterprise system analysis form that will help you think about the complex system of your organisation, its ecosystem as Indi put it, and start to plan an enterprise excellence journey that truly connects north to south and east to west. Please like, subscribe and share this podcast to help others gain insights and create a better future. That's really cool. So you're talking there about that, get that North Star strategic and cultural alignment from top to down, but I love your language around needing to adapt it. Like, are you ever going to get a plan correct? So I just love that language you mentioned where you got to have some sort of review system to be able to adapt and adjust quite regularly. And then the east to west, getting that, that real customer alignment, the value stream alignment, know where we create value. It's powerful stuff. But here's culture, mate, you're mentioning. Like, what in your work with, I guess, mate, you've worked commercial and now we're focusing on, government and not-for-profit. In your work there, what is the biggest driver of culture, mate? Because we're saying we need people to work together to actually, really ID the value and start to focus on the value and internal customers and get that performance going. What's the driver of that culture?
Well, I think we've talked about alignment, and now it's the step 2 of that journey, isn't it? Which is engagement. So the key bit about culture first is to talk about it, right? So talking about or creating the conversation around culture means bringing people together and asking people what's important to them as individuals, and then asking, well, if this is our North Star and this is our purpose, then, are we happy with our North Star and our purpose? Or what do we believe our purpose is if this is the overall North Star of the organization of what we're trying to do? And then people come up with team purposes, right? So but then if people then can connect to their purpose, Then the cultural piece then comes first in my mind with mindset. So, from a mindset perspective, how do we think? Because what we think ends up with what we say and eventually with what we do. And so we start with mindset and then we get to, okay, so what are some of our team behaviors? Now, I'm pretty sure that you'll have other guests on your podcast that will talk about behaviors and the importance of behaviors. But in my mind, it starts with the mindset and then ends up in behaviors that define the culture. So then, if you've got what you think, what you say, and what you do, you spend time with the team to really nut that out and embed that in a team social contract or embed that in a team operating plan, which is the short-term strategy. Then the cultural piece then really supports purpose and value creation. Then once you've got the cultural piece right, then you go, okay, so now that we've got our culture kind of at least defined. I mean, like cultures, again, it's a journey, not a destination, right? But once you've had a go at the cultural piece, then you go, well, how do we embed that culture in our ways of working? Once you've embedded that in your ways of working, then you've got those processes. And then if you've got processes that are capable of meeting your performance targets, then good, great. If you've got processes that can't hit your performance targets, then you've got to fix them. So then we get into structured problem solving. Then we get into, okay, so let's look at plan, do, check, act. Let's look at DMAIC. Let's look at things that will help us uplift our processes so we can hit our performance targets whilst maintaining the right behaviors and culture. Quite often what people do is they go, we've got a performance problem and we're going to fix it. And they kind of sidestep the cultural piece altogether. And what happens is performance uplifts and enhancements don't sustain because they've kind of sidestepped the culture bit. In my experience, especially in government and not-for-profit, if you hit the cultural piece head on, if you do that first, then the process bit and then the tools bit that sits under the processes to fix them become that much easier. It might be a little slower, but in my mind, it's that old thing, people have time to get things wrong, but don't have time to do things properly.
Yeah. It's that sort of, in a way, Indy, isn't it? What you're saying is get the foundations right of the way that you're connecting people, get the foundations right, the way you're thinking about the customer journey or the value stream, get your time, put the time into getting your culture defined, linking to your purpose, and then you'll go, it sort of goes slow to go fast, you know, and a lot more will stick and come out of that. But I love that language you've used of it, because you're really defining there that a lot of the tools and techniques, they then come after you've got that foundation starting to come into place. But I guess when you look at most journeys, we lead with the tools and techniques traditionally, don't we? Let's just deploy, let's do root cause, and let's do our focused improvement project, or let's map that, let's process map it and find the waste, and we'll run a rapid improvement. But things don't stick. They fall over, they go back, don't they?
Yeah, and I think this is one of the reasons why, and I'm guilty of this myself. I'll put my hand up straight away. I've been an external consultant before. When external consultants come in, they're there to fix problems and they're there to get quick results because that's what their clients want. But again, in my humble experience, organizations that take enterprise excellence seriously build an internal capability. They recognize the best people to work on the business ultimately should be in the business. So, these are people that know the work. If you know the work, then you'll know how to improve it. You'll understand current state that much better. Whereas, consultants coming in, even though they absolutely drive value, they absolutely perform, they create great solutions for performance uplift, they are constrained or hamstrung because external consultants it's really difficult to use them to uplift culture. So the best people to uplift a culture are the people in the business, and the way in which people that do the work can connect to the people that are in senior leadership that makes decisions. I guess my bit there is it's really important for senior leaders to understand the work. And quite often, when senior leaders don't understand the work of the people who do the work, that's when they bring in consultants. So you want senior leaders to be humble enough to say, I'm going to empower people that do the work to improve the work.
In India, it sounds like to me, if organizations, not-for-profit government organizations, want help with improving their entity's ability to improve and innovate and adapt, they should be looking at consultants to help them get that north, south, east, west, and then also to help start to connect culture into purpose and get those conversations going at every level. That would be, but then you think of the investment and the requirement to do that versus sending in a whole heap of consultants to deploy all these tools and techniques. It's actually a lot less investment, isn't it? Because you're basically working through the leadership chain to get that to happen, aren't you? So there's a win-win. There's a win-win all around for everyone, really. I love it. Indy, thanks so much, mate. Like, one question I got is, what would be your enterprise excellence 2-minute tip on this? If you're in an elevator with a CEO or a head of department going up a very big elevator, what would be your 2-minute tip you give them around this topic we've spoken on today?
I think focusing on what's important and the ability to prioritize and therefore make decisions around change, around what's important in enterprise, will drive the direction of transformation and drive the direction of enterprise excellence. And then the bit that brings that to life is about meeting people halfway. And this is where I've come undone before, when I've gone in and talked about my own language about improvement. I'd go in and talk about rapid improvement events. I'd talk about Kaizen. I'd go in and go, okay, we've got to do visual management. We've got to do this great stuff about huddles and Gemba walks. I think what you've got to do as a leader is meet people halfway, which is understand where they're at and use the language and the things that they're familiar with to start and kick off that change. The other bit is around going, well, actually change in government organizations and not-for-profits is slow. So, where do you want to start? I'll give you an example. If people, and I've heard this quite recently, are we doing plan, do, check, act or DMAIC, or are we doing agile? Well, if your organization is versed with agile, it's not a choice, or shouldn't be a choice, between agile and doing something else. It should be about, well, okay, so talk to me about your routines, talk to me about what you do. So immediately the leader is not telling people what to do. The leader is asking people what they do and then fit the change around their own language. I want it.
Great, Indy. Thank you so much. And Indy, for yourself, mate, what's been a recent insight you've gained, a recent aha moment?
I think I'm blown away every time when I think about complex ecosystems. I see leaders in really, really important meetings not having the time to get out into the workplace. And I think if we're going to use the dance floor and the balcony analogy or the metaphor, it's just that it's impossible to understand this ecosystem, this complex ecosystem, the interdependent parts that work with each other, if you don't spend time listening and learning, and a bit of time on the balcony. Because we can't stop and analyze what's going on if we don't appreciate the ecosystem, if we don't take time out of our day-to-day to do that. And I think even taking time out of our day-to-day is probably the wrong phrase. It's about engineering time, either whether it's deep focus time or time spent in the field. It's about engineering time and locking that time away in our calendars to say, this is something that I will do on a regular basis, because otherwise I won't understand this complex ecosystem in which people work. And as a leader, I'm a servant of.
Yeah, it's too true, isn't it, Indy? Like, trying to lead the complexity, all organizations in the world we're in, there's so much complexity. And if you're not there where it's happening, how can you truly understand it and make the right decisions? And I guess then put across and put in play the right behaviors to get that improvement. It's a great point, mate. Real insight for me also. Indy, how can people reach out to you, mate? How can they get in touch, connect, get help, learn more?
Look me up on LinkedIn. You'll find an email there. I'm putting together a website with that'll be out in the next few months, that will have a little bit more information on the type of things that Vedas Advisory do. I think it's worth also mentioning that, Brad, you're doing such a great job bringing professionals together. I think there's some really, really good networks that we are part of that help practitioners practice, right? A lot of the things that I've talked about today are the wisdom of team members, past and present. I mean, I'd love to claim credit for the stuff that we've talked about today, but in truth, they're things that I've learned from some great people, on my own personal journey. So I think LinkedIn is probably the place where you'll find me and others like me to go towards enterprise excellence.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Indy. Thanks so much, mate. Really appreciate the conversation, your knowledge, and you helping us create a better future, mate. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you for your time today.
Cheers, Indy. Bye for now.
Bye for now.
What a great episode. Remember, you can visit our website, enterpriseexcellencepodcast.com/downloads to get hold of an enterprise system analysis form that will help you think about the complex system of your organisation, its ecosystem, as Indy put it, and start to plan an enterprise excellence journey that truly connects north to south and east to west. Please like, subscribe and share this podcast to help others gain insights and create a better future. There were 2 key takeaways for me from this episode. Firstly, start with connection. Indy mentioned that government and not-for-profit organisations often have a great purpose and reason for being. The challenge is that teams are not connected to this or strategically aligned. This is a north to south connection part of enterprise alignment. Indy also mentioned gaps in the value stream and customer value connection, the east to west alignment. Establishing these systems can take some time. It is time well spent as it creates the environment within the organisation's ecosystem to create the desire and focus to drive continuous improvement innovation. The second key takeaway for me was define, cascade and lead culture. Indy spoke about the importance of culture. He spoke about helping teams look at their purpose and the organisation's values and define their own behaviours or focus to improve culture. Those few things, those few behaviours we can improve to truly make things better. This process requires leadership to understand the importance of culture and how to improve it. It requires leaders and over time team members to constantly refer back to their purpose, values and behaviours in almost everything they do. Thanks again for your time and knowledge, Indy. Thanks for helping us create a better future. Bye for now.